What is going on, beautiful people? It's your man Louie T here, back like cook crack. LouieTeeNetwork podcast. Wednesday night. So this is going to be some late night Louie action. A lot is transpiring right now. Coaching carousel rather is coming to an end here. Only one opening remaining. A lot of the coordinator positions are starting to settle in as well. We only have one GM vacancy at this current juncture. So everything's starting to fall into place. I got a massive what if scenario for you guys tonight. So we're going to talk about that at some point in tonight's show. And it's very plausible. It's very, very plausible. It's something that I've thought about over the last 72 hours or so, give or take 10 to 12. NFC, AFC championship games. I've got biggest takeaways as we move forward from those outcomes. So we'll talk about that as well. And anything else under the sun you want to get to, we'll discuss here on the Louie T Network podcast that starts now. The Louie T Network is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description. Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to the 393rd installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. A lot to get to tonight. Coaching carousel, as I mentioned at the top of the show, slowly but surely getting to its final stages as everything starts to settle in. Senior Bowl is underway. The week has gone on. I'd be lying to you if I said I was paying any attention to it. I couldn't tell you pretty much any of the players there, right? I'm off to a rough start this year. Excuse me. Because I've been so caught up in what Washington is doing in terms of getting their affairs in order, GM, head coach, and then kind of figuring out what they're going to do to fill out the staff. Still waiting on a head coach. Obviously, Washington is the final team in the NFL. 8 openings when this thing started. Now we're down to 1, and that is the Washington Commanders. So I'm still waiting to see what they decide to do. And I think we'll know before the week's end, as I talked about earlier in the day. The NFL would love if the teams settled in on a coach prior to next week. They do not want these types of decisions lingering in the next week. They don't want anything to step on the toes of the Super Bowl. So I assume Washington will make a hire here shortly and wrap up that whole process for the NFL in terms of its coaching vacancies. I want to talk about the biggest takeaways from the championship games. So that's where we're going to start tonight. We'll get into social media maneuvers. I'll start it off with a massive what if scenario. Then I'll let you guys have the floor. Then we'll come back and we'll wrap this thing up with garbage time and talk about the hire of Mike McDonald in Seattle. That is a massive move for the Seattle Seahawks. So without any further ado, let's get to the gem dropping session, shall we? Yeah, we shall. Let me drop this gem on your melon. Open your mind, let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man, Louie T double E. Let me open you up. Get you thinking a little bit. So I want to go back to Sunday, Championship Sunday, and not to the actual games and the outcomes and how they were reached. We've already done that. I want to talk about the fallout from those final scores and what they represent moving forward for all four teams that participated in Championship Sunday. We're going to start with the first game, which was the AFC Championship. We'll start with the losing team. Generally, we start with the winners here on this program, but we're going to start with the losing side of the equation in the Baltimore Ravens. And the first takeaway, and I'll try to go in the order of least to most significant in my eyes. And if you have some takeaways from any of these games, from any of these teams, feel free to leave it in the comment section. So with the Ravens, I think the first takeaway for me, and we talked about this during the breakdown, right, immediately after the game, was what happened to Todd Monken in the offense. It didn't look like the offense we had seen for most of the season. I don't think that they ran the football nearly enough. I also thought that Lamar wanted to showcase his ability to throw. I thought there were more opportunities for him to tuck it and run, including a play where he was sacked, stripped of the football. It's easy to, pull up the all 22s and look at a clip and freeze frame it where there's massive rush lanes for him to take off. But he was about to throw the football when he got sacked. So somebody might have come open. You don't know, right? At the end of the day, I didn't think Monken utilized Lamar's legs nearly enough. Just the threat of Lamar running is a game changer. And and he knows that. Obviously, he coached him all season long, and he understands what Lamar's legs mean to the Ravens offense and what that does to a defense. Just the threat of him running. You don't have to run him, but just the threat of him running is enough to hold a defense, hold linebackers. I didn't think he utilized Lamar's legs, and he didn't utilize the running backs. Gus Edwards was non-existent. Justice Hill didn't touch it enough. There was no excuse for them to not run the football against a Chiefs defense that was gashed in the run game the week prior against Buffalo. I thought Todd Monken waited for the absolute wrong time to call his worst game of the season. What happened to Odell Beckham Jr.? Shame on you if you step to the old dirty Beckham. Did he have a catch in the game? He might have had 2 or 3 targets, a couple of, I know one in particular, a deep ball that he actually had a step on the defender, but it was overthrown. But did he have a catch in the game? Did he have more than 3 targets in the game? Like, again, that's on Monken, not getting the ball to a guy like Odell Beckham Jr. A slant. I mean, it's not hard. It's not rocket science. Figure out a way to get your best players involved and get touches to your receivers. I didn't even think they did a good enough job of getting the tight ends involved. That was probably where your biggest mismatch was going to occur. And I didn't think they even took advantage of that. Getting the ball to Isaiah Likely, getting the ball to Mark Andrews. They should have had, at a bare minimum, 7 targets apiece for those 2 tight ends. And you probably should have been talking about 4 or 5 catches apiece for, 130 yards combined between the 2 of them. And usually that's how they utilize the tight ends. Not in this game. So that's a bit of a head scratcher. It's one of those things you'll go into the offseason and you'll say, hey, look, Todd, you got to be better. When the game is its biggest and its brightest and the stage is its biggest and the lights are its brightest, we need you to come with the shits. Like, we need you to come with your best. And we know he's capable. He came from Georgia. But this ain't college. This ain't the SEC. This is the big boy league. This is big time. And that wasn't his best representation. Next takeaway for the Ravens, this is a big one. They lose defensive coordinator Mike Macdonald. And I don't know if I can really put into words how big of a loss this is. They pretty much led the NFL in every defensive statistical category known to mankind. Points allowed per game, turnovers forced, sacks, everything. They were the best in the league. And they did it again in Championship Sunday. They gave up 17 points. They gave up 17 points. That should have been enough to win. But it wasn't, unfortunately. Their offense could only scrape across 10 points. Obviously, the fumble by Zay Flowers into the end zone, the bad interception thrown by Lamar. They missed opportunities to score points, clearly. And who knows, again, the Chiefs might have been a little bit more aggressive in trying to score had the score been different. But that's a massive loss. And we'll see how they replace him. We talk about offensive coordinators all the time and how they're tough to replace. But defensive coordinators, if they're good enough, impact the game. And so I don't know. I wonder who they have in mind to replace him with. Obviously, the news is fresh. He just got a gig today. So we'll see what the Ravens decide to do. It'll be really interesting to see what happens. And then lastly, Lamar Jackson's can't win narrative grows. And this is a big one. Because after this game, that is all you saw when it came to the Ravens. And I thought Lamar, took a little shot at some of the fans. He put out a post after the game was over, thanking the fans, the real fans, he said. So, that was his way of taking a shot at the fans that were criticizing. There were even fans getting on Zay Flowers. It was ugly, man. And look, the kid made a mistake. Shit happens, right? You don't want it to happen. You hate to see it, but it happened. And he owned up to it. Like, I don't know what more you want from the young man. He was trying to make a play, and it was a great play by the Chiefs. L'Jarius Sneed made a fantastic play. Sometimes you just got to give credit to the opposition. I don't know. Lamar did not play well. And I really felt like he was trying too hard to prove to everybody that he could do it from the pocket instead of using his legs. And I hate when that black quarterback complex shit comes into play. Like, just be you, bro. There were more opportunities for him to run in that game, and he just didn't. How many plays can you recollect from Sunday's game where Lamar's just standing back there, and then he ends up getting sacked or has to throw it away or he forces it and it's incomplete. And you're like, bro, what are you doing? Just take off and run. And in past games, he would have just taken off and run. I thought that he tried to shut the naysayers up with his arm and not his legs. And at this point, win by any means necessary. Nobody cares what it looks like aesthetically. Just do it. And here's the thing that I worry about now with Lamar is, bro, that was your best opportunity. I don't know if you get a better opportunity. Mike McDonald is gone. Your defense may never be that good again. This was the best team the Ravens had assembled around Lamar Jackson. The defense was lights out. They were relatively healthy. They got Mark Andrews back right for this game. The defense, again, Marlon Humphrey came back for this game as well. They were as healthy as you could be this time of the year, sans for the running back position, but they were over that. They had enough time to figure that situation out, and they did. No Joe Burrow to contend with. You were able to win the division relatively easy because he was gone. And I think the Browns are going to only get better. The Steelers are only going to get better. Obviously, the Bengals, when Burrow is healthy, they've been to the AFC Championship in both years where he started and finished the season. So that's going to make your road that much tougher. And let's not forget the elephant in the room. Lamar staying healthy himself, which has been an issue for this team the last 3 years, finishing the season, 2 in particular. I don't know if you get this opportunity again, and you can't take these opportunities for granted in the NFL. You just can't. So often you hear people say, you know what, we'll get them next year. We'll be back. I don't know about that. I can tell you firsthand, as being a fan of the NFL for as many years as I've been a fan, I've heard that so many times. And I've seen teams never make it back. I've seen individual players that thought they would have another shot never make it back again. This is a real narrative. He's now 2-4 in his career in the postseason. He's now 1-3 at home. Like, this is a real thing. He was the number 1 seed in the AFC. This was a vulnerable Chiefs team. They scored 17 points, and you couldn't beat them. Again, it's a team game. Lamar didn't lose this game by himself, but he had a fumble. He threw a back-breaking pick. He didn't play well. He did not play well. We'll see what happens, but that's a bitter pill to swallow. Kansas City Chiefs move on to the winners in that game. And the first takeaway for me is the Chiefs have successfully completed their first roadmap to the Super Bowl. And that was foreign territory for them. They had never had to travel on the road to make it to the Super Bowl before with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, Travis Kelce and company. They've always had the road to the Super Bowl paved through Arrowhead in the AFC. So for them to go on the road at Buffalo, on the road at Baltimore, and have to unseat both the number 2 and 1 seed in short order in consecutive weeks, super impressive. And it's another feather in their cap as they continue to build a massive legacy in Kansas City. They're still not at the Brady and Belichick level, obviously, and I don't think they'll get there because I don't know if Andy Reid sticks around long enough to have that happen. But the damage that they've done in 6 years, remarkable. They win this Super Bowl. It'll be their 3rd Super Bowl win in 6 years. They're in 4 trips. And it'll be 6 straight AFC Championship games. Again, this is one of those things where you have to marvel at it. They make it look easy. It's not. I just talked about how the Ravens may not get back to the AFC Championship game ever. Lamar may never play in the AFC Championship game again. There's no guarantees that happens. The Chiefs have played in 6 consecutive. 6 consecutive. And won 4 of them. Next takeaway, the legend of Travis Kelce grows. Kelce put in a massive performance, 11 catches, over 100 and some odd yards, made some big catches, including a fourth down catch on the very first possession of the game as the Chiefs marched down the field, and he capped it off with the touchdown grab. He continues to be one of the best tight ends we've ever seen in NFL history, and his legend continues to grow. The fact that somebody asked me after the game, where does Travis Kelce rank? Is he better than Tony Gonzalez? And I don't even know if Gonzalez and his profile matches that of Travis Kelce's. We know Gonzalez probably leads the NFL in catches and yards and all that stuff at the tight end position. And that might be just more so from longevity. Tony Gonzalez played a very long time in the NFL. And I don't recall a major injury to Tony Gonzalez in any season. I could be wrong, and he could have had, one season marred by injury, but I just remember Tony Gonzalez pretty much being available almost every single week. And I think Gonzalez's career, gosh, he might have started playing in the mid-90s. And I don't think he hung it up until like that Super Bowl loss. He was on that Falcons team and he had a shot at the Super Bowl and they didn't win it. And I think he came back the next year to see if they could get back there, and they didn't. And I think he retired after that. So you're talking what, 2017, maybe? Somewhere in that neighborhood? We don't have to guess. I always tell myself, you don't have to guess. We can just look this stuff up and see how long he played for. And the beauty of what 17 seasons, that's what put Tony Gonzalez in a different category is, let's see. No, he didn't make it on those Super Bowl teams. He started in the NFL, like I said, mid-90s, 97. And he played until 2013. Now, I mean, the list of accomplishments are long. And again, I don't know if Kelce will be able to overtake 6 first-team All-Pros, 4 second-team All-Pros, 14 Pro Bowl appearances, NFL reception leader in 2004, NFL All-Decade team in the 2000s. I mean, there's so many. Let's see. Kelce, he got 1,325 receptions, 15,000 yards receiving, and 111 touchdowns. Let's see where Kelce is right now in his career and how long he's been playing. See, Kelce's been playing for, this is what, year 10 or 11? So he came into the league in 2013, and so 10 years essentially, 2013, 2023. He's won 2 Super Bowls, which is something Tony Gonzalez never did. 4-team All-Pro, 4 times first-team All-Pro. Gonzalez was 6. 3 times second team. I think Gonzalez was 4. So he's pretty much right where he needs to be in that category in less years, obviously. 9-time Pro Bowler. Gonzalez was 14, but again, Kelce has only played 10 seasons and he's been a Pro Bowler in 9 of them. So again, he's on track. He's All-Decade 2010 team. So yeah, this dude is ridiculous, man. When it's all said and done, and I just want to look at in receptions, 907. I think what we say Gonzalez was like 15 something ridiculous. Like, no, I think he was at 13 something. And then he was at 15,000 yards, and Kelce's at 11,000. And Gonzalez is at 111 receiving touchdowns. Kelce's at 74. So he's got a ways to go from a statistical standpoint. But when you talk about winning Super Bowls and being like a huge catalyst in all of that, that is impressive what Kelce's been able to do. And I want to look up Gronk real quick, because I think he's in this conversation too. Him and Kellen Winslow Sr., I think, are all in that conversation. I think those are the 4 tight ends. So Gronk played from 2010 to 2018, so that's 8 seasons. And then he came back and played 2 years for the Bucs. So he played roughly 10 seasons in the NFL. So I don't think he's going to get it just based off of the longevity. He just didn't play long enough. But he won 4 Super Bowls, 4 times all first team All Pro, 5-time Pro Bowler. Yeah, so these numbers aren't in. It's like 621 receptions. Like, he's not even close to Kelce or Gonzalez. 9,000 receiving yards. So yeah, he didn't even make it to 10,000, but he's got 92 touchdowns, and that's Kelce's still trying to catch him. Had he played longer, he would have passed Gonzalez in the touchdown department. What about Antonio Gates? I'm going down a rabbit hole. You got to excuse me. This is why I don't do these things, because I go down rabbit holes sometimes. Let's check Antonio Gates, and then we'll be done. I'll stop there. No, I won't. I got one more after Antonio Gates. I would have checked Kellen Winslow's numbers, but let's check. So Gates played 15 years in the league, and he was undrafted. That's special right there. He was undrafted. 4-time All-Pro, first team All-Pro, 2-time second team All-Pro, 8-time Pro Bowler, 955 receptions. So Kelce is, I think, already passed him in receptions. Kelce's right there with him in yards. I don't think he's passed him yet. They're both at 11,000, but Gates is at 11,841. I think Kelce was like 11,300 and something. So he's got a little bit more ways to go. But one more season of Kelce playing, and he'll pass Gates in yards. But Gates has the most receiving touchdowns of all these tight ends at 116. So that's something to also consider there with Gates. Let me go to Kellen Winslow, and then we'll move on after this. I promise. So when somebody brings this up, I can have a better working knowledge of where all of these tight ends sit. He played different league, boy. He played 8 years in the league at Winslow. 3-time first team All-Pro. He was a second team All-Pro once. He was a second team All-Pro in his last year. He was a Pro Bowler in his last year, and he just retired. He might have just said to hell with it. Different NFL, though. Way more physical, right? 5-time Pro Bowler, led the league in receptions twice in his career. All 80s decade team, 541 receptions. So his numbers, again, it's a different league, different time. A lot of the seasons he played, it was only 14 games. So again, you got to, you would literally need to factor in all of those things and adjust his numbers to the inflation of today, right? The amount of games, the wide open pass, and their attack, their passing attack. Air Coryell was innovative and unique passing attack at that time. Like, it was one of the more innovative passing games in the NFL. 541 receptions, 6,741 yards, and 45 receiving touchdowns. So he belongs in that conversation, but his numbers, again, it's a different NFL. Pales in comparison. I mean, we're playing 17 games now. When he was coming up, they were playing 14 games. So it's hard to, compare the two, but nonetheless, I digress. Kelce, just understand that Kelce's legend continues to grow. And if he were to win another Super Bowl, he'd just be one behind Gronk in that department. Gronk has 4. He'd have 3. He'd have, obviously, Gonzalez never won a Super Bowl, so he'd have a leg up on him in that conversation. If he continues to play, he'll have a chance to catch Gonzalez in the I don't think he'll catch him in the reception department, but he might have a chance to catch him in the yardage department for sure. If he continues to play at the level that he's been playing for another 3 or 4 years, he could catch him in that department. I don't know, man. Kelce, you could make a strong argument that he could be TBE when it's all said and done at the tight end position. Going to be hard to pass Gonzalez, though. Speaking of TBE, the Mahomes TBE conversation gains more steam. I saw Mike Greenberg tweet this out after the win against the Ravens that Mahomes is already the best quarterback in NFL history. And I struggle with that as much as I think I've already made it abundantly clear how I feel. It's still Brady 1 and then Mahomes 2. And then I think there's a wide gap in margin between Mahomes at 2 and whomever you want to put at 3. And I know all of the people are like, well, you youngsters act like football started in 1980. Or, look, man, I get the NFL was a different animal and quarterbacks had to deal with a hell of a lot more. And they're so protected nowadays and this, that, and the third. And I get all of that. I totally understand. Guys' careers were shortened because they were hit in those days. Quarterbacks used to get blazed. Well aware. Okay, so I'm not sleeping on Montana. I'm not sleeping on Bart Starr. I'm not sleeping on Roger Staubach. Not sleeping on Dan Marino and Elway and all of these guys that played in yesteryear who were incredible quarterbacks. Bradshaw, with all the Super Bowl wins that he had. I'm not sleeping on these dudes. But I think what sets Brady apart is that you look at Bradshaw, look at how many Hall of Famers he played with. And then look at Brady and look at how many Hall of Famers he played with. And then you tell me who was aided by the supporting cast more, Brady or, Terry Bradshaw. I always felt like Brady did a lot more with less than any quarterback in NFL history, but he always had Gronk. Now, early on, he didn't have Gronk. And when those first couple Super Bowl wins, it really wasn't Brady. Like, it was more the defense, and Brady was a hell of a game manager. And when they needed plays to be made at the end of ball games, Brady would make them. But it wasn't until he got Gronk when he really started to take over games. I guess that the last Super Bowl before Gronk got there, that one against, was that the one against the Eagles? I think it was the one against the Patriots. I think so it might have been the second Super Bowl. He started to really spread his wings. It could have been the Eagles one that year. But once he got Gronk, he took off. It turned into a different animal. But Mahomes, this is the thing that separates Mahomes. What he's doing at such a young age, it's just crazy. It's crazy, man. And we marveled at Brady for what he was able to do and how many AFC championship games he went to. And I think there was a streak there at one point where they were in a row. And we marveled at how many times they won the AFC East in a row. And Mahomes is doing all of that shit. They've won the AFC West 6 years in a row. I mean, the Chiefs might have won the AFC West like 7 or 8 years in a row because I think they won it, 2 years prior to Mahomes taking over with Alex Smith as the quarterback. And that's why they got rid of Alex Smith, because they lost to the Titans and they lost to the Steelers in the playoffs at home in seasons where they won the division, and he just couldn't get them over the hump. So I think they might be working on like an 8-year, division title streak right now. So they're dominating the division. They're dominating the conference. They're going to the AFC Championship game every year. And for the first time in his career, he went on the road and got it done. So it's just another feather in his cap. And if he can get this Super Bowl, it'll be 3 in 6 years. It'll be 3 in the last, 5? I think his first AFC Championship appearance was 18. They won it in 19. So, yeah, it'll be 3 and 5 because they won it in 19. They went back in 20 and lost. Didn't go in 21. Obviously beat the Eagles in 22, and they could go back and win again in 23. And it'll be his first time winning back-to-back. He's never won back-to-back Super Bowl titles. So that could be another feather in his cap as well. If he does that, now he's in that Brady conversation, because Brady, when he won his first 3 Super Bowls, there was a back-to-back in there, right? So, man, Mahomes he's something different, man. He's something else. And then the last takeaway for the Kansas City Chiefs for me is a question, and then another question. Was this the best coaching job that Andy Reid has done in his career? I think you can argue that this was the best coaching job he's done. Very young team, not the same amount of talent that he's accustomed to having on offense. There were struggles offensively throughout the year. There were adjustments that had to be made. They had to lean on the run game a little bit more than they're usually comfortable doing. They had some snafus during the year, like Kadarius Toney being offsides and costing them a game. Kadarius Toney dropping the football and then, having a drop turn into an interception against the Lions and costing them that game. And speaking of Kadarius Toney, did you guys see the whole situation with him on IG? He pretty much called out the Chiefs and said they were capping about his injury. Because remember, I thought it was something fishy about that whole situation. So apparently he welcomed the birth. He welcomed his first child. He think that was part of the explanation as to why he was inactive. Oh, he had a kid. And then they say, oh, and he's hurt too. And Kadarius Toney was like, bro, I'm not hurt. They capping. So let me just set the record straight right now. Ain't shit wrong with me. He went off on IG. Went slam off. Destroying the Chiefs organization, talking about how they lying, this, that, and the third. And I shouldn't say destroying the Chiefs organization. He really was more so attacking the fans that have been attacking him, because they've been vicious attacking him. Giants fans, Chiefs fans. But he also wanted to make it abundantly clear, they capping. I'm not hurt. I could be out there right now. They just was like, yo, keep Kadarius Toney. And I don't think they're going to make him active for the Super Bowl either. Maybe they do, because they don't win the Super Bowl last year without him. Maybe he will step up and do what he did for them last year and make some big plays. But I wouldn't be shocked if they were like, nah, we're going to make sure you're inactive. We just don't trust you right now. And they might move on from him after the season, but we'll see. Reid did a hell of a job this year. And I thought the biggest adjustment that he had to make, that I wasn't sure if he was going to be willing to make, was just taking a back seat to the defense and allowing the defense to lead. I didn't know if he had that in him. Takes a lot for a coach who is as innovative as Andy Reid, but has always been the focal point of his teams that he's coached. The offense has usually been at the forefront. Maybe some of those Eagles teams with Jim Johnson as the defensive coordinator had the defense out in front. But in Kansas City, it's always been the offense as the catalyst. Deferring to the defense was huge. They leaned into the defense being one of the most dominant units in football, and they played to their strengths. I thought that was excellent on the part of Andy Reid. I mean, this AFC Championship game is a great example of that, right? They scored 17 points. They could have mashed the gas and kept their foot on the gas pedal and tried to be aggressive, but why? That might produce a turnover that gives Baltimore an opportunity in a short field. Why? If the defense is able to keep getting stops, forcing turnovers, and finding a way to help us win, we don't need to do anything special. When they need us and they need a first down, we'll convert it at the end of the game and bleed the clock. But we don't have to do anything special. Let's just lean into this defense. They did, and they won 17-10. I got another question for you. And we'll come back and we'll revisit this. Put a pin in this. Is this it for Andy Reid? Put a pin in that. We'll come back to that. Let's go to the NFC side of the bracket. Detroit Lions fall short 34-31. First takeaway from the game for the Lions. Jared Goff contract extension, is that on deck? I think it is. I think you have to pay Goff. I thought he played really well. I thought he gave them a chance to win. I do think there are limitations, and I thought that there was a stark contrast between the two starting quarterbacks and what they're capable of doing, and you saw it play itself out. If Jared Goff had some wheels, is that 4th and 3 that he throws to, which should have been caught, by the way, wasn't the best ball from Jared Goff, but give Goff credit. He manipulated the pocket. He stepped up, avoided pressure, and gave Josh Reynolds a catchable football, and he dropped it. But if Jared Goff had wheels, he could have just taken off and run, and he probably would have gotten the first down. But that's not in his game. That's not in his DNA. And so there are limitations, right? The other 4th down that they went for, and he had to roll out to his right. There was no chance he was going to be able to turn that corner and make something happen. And when Goff tries to rear back and let her rip, that ball comes out wobbly almost every single time. But it gets there now. But when he's off his spot and he's moving his feet and he's throwing on the run, it's not the same. And that was evident on that 4th down, because that wasn't a tough throw for a guy with a big arm who can throw on the move. Amon-Ra St. Brown was wide open. Jared Goff just couldn't get it there because that's not his game. That's not his strength. It's throwing on the move. Not like he was throwing across his body, rolling to his left and having to throw back to his right. He was moving to his right. That should have been a throw that he could have made. He just couldn't do it. So there are limitations, but man, he played well. He didn't have a single turnover in the postseason. He was just as clean as he could be. Should have thrown a pick against Tampa, but that's no here nor there. He didn't. And I think he's in line for a pretty good payday here shortly. The next takeaway is Dan Campbell can't change who he is. There was so much made of Campbell's decision-making in this game and how it cost them. Now, I don't know if you guys saw this or not. This was a big topic of conversation amongst Commanders fans because we thought we were getting Ben Johnson, and so we discussed this ad nauseum. But that decision to run at the end of the game, when the Lions still had all 3 of their timeouts with just a little bit over a minute left in the game and needed to really throw the football at that point, they took a chance and ran it, and they didn't get in, and they had to burn one of their 3 timeouts, and that pretty much signaled the end of the game, even if they were to score, which they ultimately did on 4th down, because now they needed to get an onside kick, and nobody gets onside kicks anymore because of the changes to the rules. Nobody recovers onside kicks anymore. So he took blame for that after the game. He said, "That's on me. I was the one that wanted to run the ball, not Ben Johnson. I told Ben to run the football. I thought we could sneak one in there and get in. That's on me." So he even took accountability for the run that they had there at the end, where a lot of us were saying, "Come on, Ben, you got to be better than that, man. You got to be smarter in that situation. You know that if you run it there and you don't get it, the game's over, essentially. You can't run the football there." Dan Campbell was the one that decided to do that. But he can't change who he is. The 2 4th down attempts, I didn't love them. Anytime you have a chance to push the lead out to 3 scores, you have to do it, in my estimation. It, like I said during the breakdown for the game and the recap, if they were up 11 and a field goal puts you up 14, okay, I get it. Go for the touchdown. Go for the 4th down conversion there, because a field goal isn't going to really change how San Francisco approaches things all that much. Sure, the difference between 11 and 14 is a touchdown, 2-point conversion, and a field goal, and it's tie ball game. But still, a field goal puts them in a position where they still need 2 scores anyway, whether it's 2 touchdowns or a touchdown, a 2-point conversion, and a field goal. They still need 2 scores regardless. up 14 with a chance to push it to 17, you got to take the points, man. And in a tie ball game, or you're losing rather, 27-23, and you got a chance to tie the game up, I think you got to take the points in that situation. But that's who he's been. That's who he is. And that's how the Detroit Lions got to the NFC Championship game. And he can't let the failure of this game and how things turned out dissuade him from continuing to be aggressive and being who he is. And he didn't sound apologetic after the game, nor should he have. He shouldn't have regretted what he did, and he didn't. And he should continue to be aggressive and continue to push the envelope, because that's what makes the Lions the Lions. And that's why they were in the NFC Championship game. Without his aggressiveness, they probably aren't where they were. So if you live by the sword, you die by it. And if those opportunities, if one of them would have worked and they gone on to score a touchdown, the game would have been totally different. But it didn't work. And so it's easy to second guess. But at the end of the day, he's been an unconventional coach. He's been an aggressive coach from day one. He's got to remain that way, even if it comes at the detriment of his team sometimes. Because more times than not, it's been in Detroit's favor when he's been aggressive. So he's got to continue to be who he is. Maybe use a little bit more caution at times, understanding the moment, understanding what is necessary. The 49ers had all the momentum. They simply just needed points at some point of that second half. They just needed to stop the bleeding. At some point, you just got to say, you know what? Uncle Mo is on their side. The crowd is getting involved. Let's just quiet everything down. Let's just calm everything. Let's just send our kicker out there. And I heard Detroit Lions fans saying, well, we didn't know if we could trust back. No, you could have trusted Michael Badgley. He had been really good for you this season. And none of these kicks were from 57 yards away. All of these were going to be in that 40 range, 40 whatever yard. He would have been able to knock those through. So he has to remain the same Dan Campbell, I believe, moving forward. The next one is a big one. And Lions fans, I know, feel like they're going to get back now, especially that Ben Johnson is back, and we'll talk about that one here shortly. But boy, did they miss a golden opportunity to do something special. They really fumbled the bag. I just talked about this with the Ravens. It's so hard to get to this point. Like, you can't take this for granted. You can't assume that, oh, we'll be back next year. You can't do that. This was your moment, man. You got to play 2 home games. You hadn't won a home game in the postseason since 1991. You hadn't played a postseason home game since 1993. You played 2 of them, and you were in the NFC Championship game up 17 at halftime, dominating the 49ers to the point where a lot of people thought this game was going to be over midway through the third quarter. And somehow you managed to lose the football game. That's a tough, bitter pill to swallow, because, again, you don't know what's going to happen next year. Hell, you're lucky Ben Johnson is even coming back, because the assumption was you were going to lose him. And had you lost him, just like the Ravens just lost Mike McDonald, it's tough to replicate what you just did without one of the most important pieces of what led to your success, which is your offensive coordinator. In the case of the Ravens, their defensive coordinator. It's hard to replicate that success without such a big part of the coaching staff coming back. But Johnson coming back is going to alleviate some of that stress. But, man, you can't assume that Amon-Ra St. Brown's going to have the season he had last year. You can't assume that Sam Laporta is going to have the season he had last year. You can't assume the defense is going to play as well as they did this year. You can't assume that guys are going to stay healthy. You can't assume that Jared Goff is going to continue to play at this very high level. You can't assume that those 4th downs that you went for this year, that Dan Campbell rolled the dice on, and it came up nice for you and you won games because of it. You can't assume that those are going to go in your favor next year. You can't assume that the division is going to stink next year and allow you to win 12 games and win the division. You can't assume that you're going to get back to the playoffs, host a couple of playoff games, and get back to the NFC Championship game. You hope you can do that again, but you can't assume that that's going to happen. And that's why missing this opportunity is rough. You may not get this again. Understand how hard it is to get to the NFC Championship game, and you were literally a half away from making it to the Super Bowl. This was a special season. You had a chance to make it something bigger. This is a season Lions fans will never forget. But you had a chance to have this be one for the record books. You had a chance to drop a banner. Something you've never seen done in franchise history. Not a Super Bowl one. We ain't talking NFL championships. We're talking about Super Bowls. That's a tough one, man. That's a bitter one. And then lastly, and we talked about this already, this is a big one, and this is huge for the Lions. If they are going to get back, this one's huge. Getting offensive coordinator Ben Johnson back is massive. It's massive. To me, it's the difference between me even giving them a chance to get back here again next year and me totally dismissing them. There was no way in hell they were getting back here. And it was funny listening to Lions fans after the game assume that, oh, we're going to be even better. We're going to draft this guy. We're going to draft this and we're going to draft that. And Brad Holmes has knocked it out of the park. He's going to knock it out of the park again. I'm like, all of that shit is cool. Who's calling your plays next year? Who's stepping up into that role for you next year? Because it ain't going to be Ben Johnson. Who's going to be calling your offense? Because your defense ain't all that damn good. So you need Ben Johnson. You need a prolific offensive play caller because your defense was getting thrashed in the postseason. That's why you lost. We could blame the offense, but the defense could have put out some of these fires. You didn't have to give up 27 unanswered points. Mind you, sans for the fumble by Jahmyr Gibbs that put the 49ers in great position. And again, you didn't have to give up a touchdown. He didn't fumble at his own 2-yard line. You didn't have to give up a touchdown after that, but you did. A lot of those fourth down conversions were deep in San Francisco territory, so they still had to turn around and drive 82 yards, 88 yards to score a touchdown or get a field goal. They had to still drive 50, 60 yards to get in the field goal range, and they did. Like the defense has been ass all postseason long. They've given up over 400 yards of total offense in every single game in the postseason, and this time it finally bit you in the ass. But getting Ben Johnson back puts you right back to where you were last year, where you can still outscore the opposition because Johnson is that good. That's huge, man. It gives you a realistic shot of getting back to the playoffs. And once you get to the playoffs, as we know, all bets are off. So that's massive for the Lions. Getting Ben Johnson back, which a lot of us did not think was going to happen, huge. And then the San Francisco 49ers. There's a lot to unpack here. So let's just jump in right here. The first takeaway for the 49ers, and I'll try to go mild, is they're bringing a rookie kicker to the Super Bowl. He better come correct. Jake Moody better have his shit together. It's tough taking rookies anywhere. I always say, man, leave the rookies at home. When you going out on a big stage, man, leave these rookie kickers at home, man. Leave the young boys at home. They'll get you in trouble real quick. And Moody, after round, missed the early field goal. That led to some, Detroit momentum early in the game. And obviously he had the big miss on the road at Cleveland that cost him a ball game earlier in the season, which started a nasty losing streak for them. Moody better come with his shit, because now you're playing Kansas City and every single point counts, and you're not playing Jared Goff. You're not playing in a mobile quarterback that's going to stand back there and let you get to him, or, just a little bit of pressure, moving his feet flusters him a bit and makes him a slightly inaccurate quarterback. Nah, this is different. A missed field goal could be the difference between winning and losing this game in the Super Bowl. So Jake Moody better come with his best effort in this ball game, because it could very well come down to a field goal with these two teams. This could be a lot of guys' one and only shot to win a Super Bowl. Now, some of these dudes aren't like true Niners, and oh my God, you're rooting for them to win a chip. But in the grand scheme of things, you don't know what their future is going to hold. And I don't think they're going to be back in San Francisco, potentially for some of these dudes. And so wherever you end up, you may not have another opportunity to win a Super Bowl. I think about guys like CMC and Trent when I'm really talking about this is a big opportunity for these dudes. CMC may never get back to the Super Bowl again. We don't know what the 49ers are going to do. We don't know if this is going to be a every year occurrence for them now. They're going to be one of the teams in the NFC to beat. And they've been in the NFC Championship game a bunch, but they haven't, won in the NFC Championship game. Hence, they haven't played in a bunch of Super Bowls. Only one. This is going to be their second. So despite having gone to the NFC Championship game 4 times, right? So there's no guarantees, as I just said with Detroit, that you get back here. For a guy like Christian McCaffrey, who touches it so much, and there's a lot of wear and tear on his body, you can't assume that he's going to be able to stay healthy, 1, and 2, be as productive as he was this season moving forward. So a guy like Christian McCaffrey, you got to win this Super Bowl, bro. Trent Williams has spent his entire career trying to get to this game. Like, I want so badly for him to win a Super Bowl. But, standing in his way is going to be Mahomes, Kelce, and company. And they're not going to make it easy on him. But Trent Williams is one of those dudes that all he needs is this Super Bowl to cement his legacy. It doesn't matter if he never wins a Super Bowl. But a Super Bowl would cement his legacy as one of the greatest tackles in the NFL, right? Like, he's been that guy. And he'll be one of the, if not the best tackle of his era with a Super Bowl win under his belt. So that's a big one. And then there's a couple of guys that the 49ers went out and hunted after to try to push him over the top that have probably been a little bit of a disappointment. Randy Gregory, right? Chase Young. I don't think either one of them will be back next year. So for me, and Gregory, I don't know, he might still be under contract. Chase Young is not under contract, and neither one of them have been huge impact players. And Young has been very disappointing, including the championship game where there was a lot of criticism coming his way, and rightfully so. The effort wasn't there. The playmaking ability hasn't been there. He's been blocked too often by receivers and tight ends and things of that nature. And so he's not getting any pressure on the quarterback. But so I'm essentially saying, you probably not going to be on this team again next year. And if that's the case, who knows where you end up? You might not get this opportunity again. You better seize it, is what I'm saying. So we'll see what happens with those guys. But the next takeaway is Steve Wilks and the defense must step up. They got to step up. They have not been good this postseason. In the 2 games, they were in danger of being the reason that the 49ers did not reach their ultimate goal of winning the Super Bowl this year. They should have lost to Green Bay and they should have lost to Detroit, and the defense would have been to blame in both instances. No, the offense could have been better. And specifically the Green Bay game, the offense wasn't good enough for San Francisco until the very bitter end. But defensively, they weren't getting the stops. They weren't creating the turnovers. They weren't doing the things that we had become accustomed to seeing the 49ers do defensively. Jordan Love had a solid game, and Aaron Jones was devouring them on the ground. But they survived that game. In this game against Detroit, they were getting manhandled up front. And that's something they're going to have to clean up. They got manhandled against Aaron Jones. They got manhandled last week against Detroit. 3 guys had over 40 yards rushing. And I think the Lions had 170 or 80 yards total as a team rushing. They got to clean that shit up. They're not getting pressure on the quarterback consistently. And if they don't get to Mahomes, this ain't Jared Goff. This ain't Jordan Love. You don't get to Mahomes, God bless and good night. So they're gonna have to figure some shit out. Because the efforts that they've put forth haven't been good enough. If they were playing a normal coach who wasn't as aggressive, they lose to the Detroit Lions. They lose that game. Because I think if he would have just taken that first field goal in the second half and pushed it back out to 3 scores, he would have broken the spirits of the 49ers right then and there. They did all of that work in their first drive of the second half and only came away with 3, and you turn right back around and give it right back, and now you're back down by 17 again. So you haven't made up any ground, and half of the third quarter is gone. I think that would have broke them. But luckily enough, Campbell was over aggressive. They don't get it. And now you're only down 14. You take advantage. You go down and you score a touchdown. And now you're down 7. They fumble on the next possession, the first play. And then you're tied. Just like that. So try that shit against Kansas City if you want and see if you have similar results. I'm telling you right now, no, you won't have similar results. You won't win. They better tighten up on defense. Next takeaway for the 49ers. This is Kyle Shanahan's moment. He better seize it. The knock on Kyle is that he doesn't have a Super Bowl. People still hold the Atlanta Falcons 28-3 debacle over his head. People still hold the 20-10 loss in the fourth quarter with 7 minutes to go against the Chiefs, ultimately losing that game 31-20 over his head. People, hold the loss to the Rams in the NFC Championship game over his head. He can't get it done in the biggest games. He's in the process of flipping that narrative upside down on its head. With the 2 come from behind victories in the 2 playoff games this year, if he can complete the cycle and win the Super Bowl, it will completely destroy the narrative that Kyle Shanahan can't bring teams back, can't win the big game, can't win in tough, adverse situations. It'll change all of that, and it'll catapult him into a category and stratosphere where I think he belongs. But he's got to win the Super Bowl to be able to do that. He's got to win the Super Bowl to validate who he is as a coach. I already know. You already know. Even if you don't like him and you don't want to admit it, you know Kyle Shanahan is that dude. But you got to have the hardware to back it up. He's got to have this one. And again, as I mentioned with Detroit and I mentioned with Baltimore, there's no guarantee that you're getting back here. It's just not. And then lastly, Brock Purdy quieting all the naysayers, but the job is not done yet. And I say that because Purdy's performance in the NFC Championship game was stellar, specifically in the second half, where he was using his legs to extend and make big plays, and he managed the shit out of the game, and he made big plays off schedule. He made big plays from the pocket. He was extraordinary. When they needed his best and his best was required, he delivered. 2 weeks in a row. Because he did not play well in the first 3 quarters of that Packers game. But when they needed him the most in the fourth quarter of that Packers game, specifically that final drive to take the lead once and for all, he delivered. And he did it again against the Lions. When they needed him to show up, he delivered. Specifically, that last drive to put him up 10, when he used his legs to get him down there, he was spectacular. Now, what they going to say now, right? Nothing right now. But in 2 weeks from now, if you don't win and you don't play well and you lose in the Super Bowl, we're going right back to that game manager narrative. Cam Newton's going to tweet out, see what I tell y'all. People will probably come after him and say, bro, you didn't win the Super Bowl either. Shut up. But that ain't going to stop Cam from saying, hey, I said what I said. And that's not going to stop others from piggybacking off of that. People are waiting for Brock Purdy to fail. You'd be a damn fool to think they're not waiting for Brock Purdy to fail. He's got to prove to everybody that I'm not a fluke. I'm more than just a game manager. And I'm a Super Bowl winning quarterback. Because you can't say nothing to that. Even Cam Newton can't say shit about that. What you going to say if he wins the Super Bowl? Nathan. So this is Brock Purdy's opportunity to put all of that to rest. He won't have to answer these questions ever again if he wins the Lombardi. You can put that to bed right now. Go get you one. You win this Super Bowl, guess what? You got the same amount of Super Bowls as Aaron Rodgers. Same amount of Super Bowls as Drew Brees. Go get it. Shut him up once and for all. You don't have to deal with this shit no more. Win the Super Bowl. You lose, and it all comes right back as if you never got them here in the first place. Especially if you don't play well. If you play your ass off like Jalen Hurts did and it ends up being a loss because this defense that I just talked about that has been getting gashed gives up 34 and you score 31 and you lose, people will remember that and they'll give you credit for that, but they still going to say, hey, you ain't win a Super Bowl. But people won't be on your back as much. But, you know, you struggle to start next year, or you have a rough patch, they'll jump on your back again. The Super Bowl is the repellent. It's repellent. Anytime you want to attack Eli Manning, all he has to do is say, I got 2 Super Bowls and I beat Tom Brady and I stopped the Patriots from going 18-0 and being the greatest team in NFL history. What you going to say to that? That's the repellent. Eli Manning's not a Hall of Famer. 2 Super Bowl rings, that's the repellent. What you going to say? You can't say nothing to winning. You can talk all this shit you want, but as soon as somebody flashes the hardware, as soon as they bust out the jewels, you can't say nothing. Brock Purdy has a chance to do that. So that's the gym dropping session. Those are my takeaways from Championship Sunday and the 4 teams. Let's get to social media maneuvers. I'm a midnight marauder. Y'all know what it is. Y'all know how this works. If you don't, it's very simple. If you want your comment read on the air, if it is pertinent, use the hashtag LouieTeeLive to have your comment read on the air. Now, if you want to ensure that your comment is read, super chats are the way to do so. Okay. I can't assure you that your comment is going to be read unless you super chat it. Now, we'll get to as many of these as we can, but we're not going to be here all night. So again, super chatting is the way to ensure that your comment is read. But if you use the hashtag LouieTeeLive, we'll get to as many of those as time permits. So with that said, let's jump to the comment section. Let me start with mine first. Let me start with mine. What if, and I may get some comments off this. What if, so let me start by saying this. Last year, Andy Reid won the Super Bowl. It was his 2nd Super Bowl title. And people speculated whether he was going to hang it up. And he didn't dispel rumors initially before the Super Bowl. after the Super Bowl, remember, it was kind of weird. He sat in this like closet, this broom closet with Peter King as everybody else is celebrating. Him and Peter King sneak off into a side room, and Peter King gets him to sit down with him for like 8 minutes. And they talk, and he's like, yeah, I'm not retiring. Right. He pretty much put the rumors to bed. Right. But he didn't do that the entire lead up to the Super Bowl. But the fact that he thought about it lends you to believe that there's a chance that he could be like, yeah, I'm done now. I'm good. I don't know where his head is, right? These coaches are weird like that because they devote so much of their time. Being a coach is so tough on the family life. You really don't have one. I think the two toughest professions, and I could be wrong about this, and there could be other professions that are just as brutal on family time. But to me, being a detective and being an NFL head coach are two of the most brutal on a marriage and family life because you miss so much. Think about an NFL coach. You really are working 11 months out of the year as an NFL head coach. The only month you really get off is from June, like the middle of June after your last mini camp, from the middle of June until the midpoint of July. Like the office shuts down, everybody gets to go home, and you literally, that's when you'll see coaches out on the golf course or spending time with their family. Like that's literally the only time they have. But from July, late July, all the way until June, mid-June, you're working. You got the season that spans, really the season starts in July and it spans all the way through, depending on who you are. In the case of Andy Reid, he usually doesn't end his season until sometime in February, definitely January, right? But soon as the season's over in February, you transition right into free agency, getting your ducks in order for that because the new league year starts in March. As soon as that's over with and you get all of that situated, now you got to go straight into the draft, right? Prep for that, get everything ready, right? As soon as that's over, late April, early May, now you got rookie mini camps. That's right after the draft. After the rookie minis, you got vet minis, right? So you're not going anywhere until after that. So you really aren't spending time with your family, and all of this stuff is so time consuming. Detectives, they spend hours upon hours on cases. They may not go home for 36 hours straight. Then they get home, they go straight to sleep because they've been up working a case. So they're not spending time with their family even when they go home. And then you could be spending time with your family. You're supposed to be off. You catch a body, boom. They call you up. This is your case. This is your body. You got to go in. It's tough, right? So that's why you see coaches get to a certain age and they could still do it, but they're like, yo, like Frank Reich got fired from the Panthers and he's like, bro, I think I'm done, man. He could still coach if he wanted to. But he's like, yo, I've been doing this. I've been at this for a long time. I missed a lot of shit. I want to play with my grands, man. Like I'm at that age now where I just want to enjoy my family. Andy Reid could be at that point. You know, he could be at that point. Who knows? So my what if is, what if Andy Reid wins the Super Bowl? Decides he wants to ride off into the sunset. And Bill Belichick says, hey, remember he made the statement, I'm waiting for the right opportunity. What if Andy Reid says, hey, Bill, I'm going to hand you this baton, bro. You want this? It's all yours if you want it, bro. And what if that's the right opportunity for Bill Belichick? Wouldn't that be some shit? It could happen. Andy Reid retires. Who's going to replace him? You know what else I thought about? What if Ben Johnson thought to himself, Andy Reid could retire. How about I just wait? I mean, I got my fallback plan is Detroit. I go back to Detroit and coach there. You know, he's talked about, oh, love it in Detroit. My family loves it here, yada, yada, yada. That's all great. Are you going to turn down an opportunity to coach Patrick Mahomes and that Chiefs offense? Are you going to turn down that opportunity if it presents itself? Because that's the opportunity of a lifetime. So Ben Johnson, yeah, he's back in Detroit for now. But what if Andy Reid retires? Now there's another opening. And what if Ben Johnson says, hey, wait a minute. I get to coach Patrick Mahomes in the prime of his career for the next 10 years? Think I might have to take that job. I'm not saying. I'm just saying it's just a little food for thought. Y'all do the dishes. But what if? What if Andy Reid hangs it up? I'm not giving the job to Matt Nagy. I'm not calling Eric Bieniemy back up to come take the job. I'm not giving the job to Steve Spagnuolo. I mean, that'd be a great story, wouldn't it? I'd give the job to Ben Johnson or even Bill Belichick. We know he can win. We know what Belichick can do with this type of quarterback. He doesn't even have to touch the defense. If Steve Spagnuolo gets in his feelings, though, like, yo, you ain't promote me to head coach, I'm out. Belichick's like, cool, I'll just take over the defense. You got him in a real good spot. I'll take it from here. You know what he gonna do. You know he gonna bring the whole band back with him. He gonna get the band back together. So he gonna bring Steve, his son, with him. He gonna go get Josh McDaniels. You know what it is. You already know what he's gonna do. And you know what Josh is gonna do. Josh is a shit head coach. He's a garbage. He's probably, I don't know this for a fact, but he's probably a garbage human being. He strikes me as one of those dudes that's super arrogant and just socially awkward, sort of like Adam Gase. That's how Josh McDaniels strikes me. I could be wrong about that. I don't know the guy. But I can tell you one thing. He's a hell of an offensive coordinator. I do know that. And you give him Patrick Mahomes, it's Brady 2.0, bro. Now, again, this is a what if. The Chiefs could win and Andy Reid be like, yo, run this shit back. Chiefs could lose and Andy be like, hey, I'm on a mission. We're going to San Antonio Spurs this bitch and we're going to go back and win it next year. But what if he retires? That's some pretty tempting shit, man. I'll tell you that much. I digress. Let's get to the comment section. Rich, thank you for being a member for 29 months. Rich writes, there's rumblings in Mobile that we got Quinn. I haven't heard them. I don't know them, but are you surprised if that is in fact the case? I'm not. I'm not speculating anything anymore. I'm just going to sit back and let it happen. I've already said everything that I have to say on the matter. It's either Quinn or Weaver at this point for me. It's not Glenn. It's never been Glenn. It was never going to be Glenn. Okay. This, I thought, was a 2-horse race between Johnson and McDonald. Johnson bowed out. McDonald took the Seahawks job, which is what I would have done if I were him. And I told y'all that yesterday. This job was set up as one of the better jobs for an offensive guy that was willing to come in here and build it from the ground up with the GM. And that's why I thought this was going to be an attractive job, because you could come in and be in lockstep with the GM and build it in your image the way you want to build it as an offensive play caller. And I thought Ben Johnson was ready for that opportunity. Clearly he was not. But I thought in my mind, and you know, my mind can race and I can come up with things sometimes and my imagination gets away from me. And I felt like the Temptations. It was just my imagination once again running away with me. It was just my imagination. And I allowed myself to go, well, Adam Peters showed up in 2017 in San Francisco when the team was 2-14 with the number 2 overall pick, and he helped build that shit into the bully that they are now. I said Ben Johnson showed up in 2019 when the Lions were one of the laughing stocks of the NFL. It wasn't until 2 years later when Dan Campbell showed up. They started 0-10, went 3-13-1. The next year they started 1-6, and he saw what it was like to build it from the ground up. So I thought these are two guys that saw what it was like at the bottom and knows what it takes to get to the top. And you bring them both here and you let them put their heads together, and they're going to help us turn it around. That was what my imagination did. It ran wild. It didn't happen. I think Adam Peters is still capable of doing exactly that. It just didn't happen the way that I thought. But at this point now, it's Quinn or it's Weaver. I think it's a two-horse. Like, the fans have become so impatient that they're going off and creating all kinds of different storylines that don't exist. Well, are they waiting for somebody that's in the Super Bowl? Could it be Spagnuolo? Could it be Steve Wilkes? No, it's neither of those things. They're not waiting on anybody in the Super Bowl. They would have interviewed them via Zoom if they were interested. They've done this in a way that has set them up to make a decision, and I think that decision will be made tomorrow. If not tomorrow, Friday. It'll be this week, though. I think what got me in trouble was how fast the GM search went. And I just anticipated the head coaching search being equally as quick. And again, if Ben Johnson was the hire, it would have gone quickly. But he wasn't. So I think it's taken a little bit longer because they had to pivot. Their plan A didn't go as they drew it up. And so now they got to go to plan B. And so I think that's why it's taking a little bit longer. But again, they'll make a decision. And I think it's Quinn or it's Weaver. I don't think it's anything else. And it's not one of the coaches that's still coaching and they're waiting on. No, it's none of that. The process is over in terms of interviewing. That's why Adam Peters went to Mobile. It's over. They're going to figure this stuff out. And I think they're going to make the announcement here shortly. And we'll see. If it's Quinn, it's Quinn. If it's Weaver, cool. Whatever happens, I'm rolling. Let's do it. Let's get to work. All right. Christopher McLaughlin, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Christopher McLaughlin, thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy Chris writes, hey Lou, what's up, Chris? Hope all is well with you and the fam. Likewise, as always. Says, curious your thoughts on if Andy Reid wins another Super Bowl. Is he a top 10 all-time greatest coach and why? A lot of great coaches. But yeah, he's got to be. Got to be because he's already got 2. You get to that 3 number and you're in rarefied air at that point. A lot of coaches have 2. There aren't many that have 3, though. Ain't a lot of those, right? It's Belichick. And I'm talking about as the head coach, not like you're the defensive coordinator on a staff that wins and then you won 2 more as a head coach. Nah, I'm talking about you were the head guy. There's Belichick. Bill Walsh. I'm assuming. My guess is Bill Walsh probably has at least 3 Super Bowls. There's Tom Landry, has to have at least 3. And then Chuck Noll has to have at least 3. I think that's it. And Joe Gibbs, excuse me. So there's Belichick, Gibbs, Noll, Landry, and Walsh, I think is the list. And that's it. I think Lombardi may have, but I don't know if Lombardi has Super Bowls. Lombardi, I think he's got NFL championships. I don't think Lombardi has Super Bowls. They didn't merge until 70, and I think Lombardi passed in 69, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, Lombardi's obviously the trophy's named after him, so you have to put him in that conversation. And Paul Brown and some of those other guys that are, pioneers of the game. But again, you start talking Super Bowl era and you talk about 3 Super Bowl wins, it's rarefied air. There are only about 5 coaches, and I think I named them all. And remember, Andy Reid is like, let's see where he is all time. I think Andy Reid is like 5th or 6th all time in wins in the NFL, head coaching wise. Andy Reid all time wins list. Andy Reid is 4th on this list, guys, behind Don Shula, George Halas. Don Shula might have 3. I think he might have won one. Did he win any with Baltimore Colts? Don Shula when he was with the Colts. I don't know if that was post-merger or not. He might have won with the Baltimore Colts when it was the NFL championship, not the Super Bowl, right? Clearly, he won multiple rings with the Dolphins, did Don Shula. But I don't know if he won 3 with them. Anyway, Shula, obviously, George Halas, Bill Belichick are 1, 2, and 3 on the list. And then Andy Reid is 4th. So, man, I don't know if you could put Andy top 5, though, because you got to think about when you start talking about greatest of all time and you talking about coaches, you got to also take into consideration impact on the game. Like that to me for coaches is so paramount. Like with players, you don't got to worry about that shit. For coaches, though, it is so important to talk about the impact that you had on the game. And like Andy is cool, but Andy doesn't have a tree. Andy's been innovative, but like Bill Walsh created an offense, a system that is still run today. So many versions of it, so many spinoffs of it, but it's at its core, it's the West Coast offense. That's Bill Walsh's baby. Like Shanahan, like I know he's got 2 Super Bowl wins, but what that offense that Mike Shanahan has, that Shanahan scheme, that's a game changer. The Shanahan tree? Are you kidding me? What? Like the Walsh and the Shanahan trees, because Shanahan came from the Walsh tree, right? Andy Reid came from the Walsh tree. And Shanahan sprouted off, and then he started his own tree. And you could argue after Walsh's tree, Shanahan has the next most successful NFL tree. And so those things are important. Paul Brown's contribution to the NFL, the device in the helmet, that was Paul Brown, right? Putting an actual communication device so that he could talk to the quarterback on the field, that was Paul Brown. Like those types of things, you can't overlook that stuff. Plus, he won a lot. Yeah, I don't know about top 5. Did you say 5? You said 10. 10, yeah. Top 10, yeah. I think with the 3rd win, he's 10. I thought we were talking 5. 10, yeah. I think even if he's 10th, cool, he's 10. With the amount of wins, 4th overall, with the amount of Super Bowl wins, 3. He's been to 4 Super Bowls, and we talk about this too, taking 2 different franchises to Super Bowls. That's another list that's rarefied air. Andy Reid is one of probably like 4 maybe coaches. We know Parcells did it. I mean, I'm pretty sure there's other coaches that have taken multiple teams to the Super Bowl. I just can't think of many because it's so hard to do. It's rare that you see a coach have massive success in 2 different stops. Generally, if you're really good, you have success and you stay there, and then you don't have success again elsewhere. So, I don't know if there's another coach. I mean, shit. There's got to be. Let me look it up. Got to be another coach other than Bill Parcells and Andy Reid that have taken multiple teams to the Super Bowl. List of coaches who have taken multiple teams to Super Bowl. Okay, here's the list. Dick Vermeil did it with the Rams and the Eagles. Okay, so I see Dick Vermeil, and I forgot about the Eagles one with him. Parcells, we already named him. Dan Reeves, boy, Dan Reeves doesn't get any credit because he didn't win any of them. Dan Reeves went to like 6 Super Bowls, though. Shit, Dan Reeves took, I was about to say 3 organizations. I don't think he took the Giants. Dan Reeves took the Falcons, and he took the Broncos multiple times with Elway. Dan Reeves was a damn good coach. He never gets the credit because he never won. It sucks because he was such a good coach. Andy Reid, and then Bill. Hold on. Not Bill Belichick. Don Shula. Let me see. Let's see. Don Shula. Okay, so he did coach with the Baltimore Colts. They lost to the Jets. That was the one where Joe Namath predicted the victory. I remember watching the Lost Rings, the Lost Rings documentary. They do the America's Game. That's what it's called, America's Game, Lost Rings, and they were devastated. That Baltimore Colts team, the players, they still to this day, the ones that are alive, the ones that did that, man, they won a Super Bowl. Like, they won a Super Bowl. They went on to win a Super Bowl, I believe. But that loss to the Jets, they haven't gotten over that shit yet. They never will. They'll take that anguish and that heartbreak, they'll take that shit to their grave. Like, they still are talking about that shit. So Shula also took the Colts and the Dolphins. He did not win with the Colts, I don't think, a Super Bowl, but he did take them. And then, of course, he won multiple Super Bowls with the Dolphins. So 5 coaches. That's rarefied air, right? To take 2 different franchises to the Super Bowl. Yeah, Andy Reid's top 10. Andy Reid's top 10. He's top 10. Christopher McLaughlin, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up, Chris, who writes, hey, Lou. What's up, Chris? Curious, your thoughts on the NFLPA survey that lists the top 5 OCs being Frank Smith, Thomas Brown, Brian Schottenheimer, Brian Callahan, and Kellen Moore. Who would you add or remove and why? These types of lists are always sketchy to me because you don't know how they're compiling the votes. You don't know who they're asking, who's voting, none of that stuff, because this is a weird list, right? Frank Smith isn't calling plays in Miami. Mike McDaniel is. So how is Frank Smith number 1 on this list? Thomas Brown had his play calling duties stripped from him this year in Carolina. How is he on this list, right? Like, so who are we asking? Who's giving you this data? Like this, I can't get jiggy with this shit. So I don't know how I'm supposed to respond to that, but who I would take off, I don't know. I'd probably blow the whole list up and redo it is what I would do. Because we're talking offensive coordinators. So technically we're not necessarily talking about the play caller. We're talking about the guy that has the title of offensive coordinator. That's trash. Because at its core, being an offensive coordinator to me is calling plays, being a play caller. You can have the title of OC, but if you're not actually calling the plays, I don't want to say what good are you, because clearly you have a role in helping develop the offense, putting the game plan together, things of that nature. But if you're not the play caller, like, you can put together the best game plan to attack the team that you're playing that week, but you still got to call the plays in the game, and you got to string them together, and you got to see what's going on, and you got to see how you're going to attack the defense. You got to set things up. That's part of being a play caller and an offensive coordinator to me. So a lot of these dudes don't even call plays. Like, Zach Taylor was calling the plays in Cincinnati. Brian Callahan wasn't. He was an OC in name, in title. I'd blow the whole list up and probably start from scratch, honestly speaking. Give me real OCs who call in plays, like Ben Johnson. Give me real dudes that's actually dialing them up. And then we can talk. And I'd have to go through the list. And it's going to be a brand new list, because it's going to be, obviously teams have made changes. And like a guy like Arthur Smith, I think Arthur Smith is a hell of a play caller. I thought he did a good job in Atlanta. He just had a trash quarterback situation. He went to Pittsburgh. I bet you that Pittsburgh offense tightens up. With the talent that they have, if they can get anything out of the quarterback position, I bet you that shit comes to life with Arthur Smith calling the plays. Obviously what Bobby Slowick did this year, what are we talking about, man? Like, Thomas Brown didn't call plays in LA with the Rams. Yeah, I don't even know where that list came from, but whatever. King Dre, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Writes, what if Peters is waiting on Steve Wilks? He's not. He's not. He could. I can't definitively say he's not, but I'm 99.9% sure. I gotta leave just a little bit of room for error, just in case there's a mystery candidate out there. I doubt it, seriously, because what have they done throughout this entire process that leads you to believe that there's still more work left to be done? Every candidate that they were interested in that was still coaching in the postseason, what did they do? They interviewed them via Zoom first. They didn't do any such thing with Steve Wilks, Steve Spagnuolo, or any of the candidates that people keep bringing up. I think the process is done. Just sit back and relax. There's no extra gotcha, right? There's no extra domino here to fall. They're just going to make a decision. They just haven't done it yet. It could be as simple as dotting I's and crossing T's at this point. But I think the process is done. Free Shabazz, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, yo, Lou, with this new look front office, free agency and draft on the way, I believe our star power will override whoever our coach will be. You can get away with a lot of things, but having a basic or a mid head coach isn't one of them. At some point, you're going to need your coach to step up. How many times have we complained about Ronald Rivera? In-game, lack of adjustments, not calling timeouts when he's supposed to, not throwing the challenge flag when he's not supposed to, mangling the clock at the end of the first half and not leaving us enough time to be aggressive, or, whatever the case. Those things matter. Putting your players in the best position to succeed, having them prepared for the game when it starts, and not getting, when to go for two, when to kick the extra point, when to go for it on fourth down, when to be aggressive. We didn't attempt a single fake field goal or punt in the entire Ron Rivera era. Like, that shit matters. So I don't think you can just override the coach. Like, yeah, we're going to have all this stuff going on and the coach is going to be rendered irrelevant. Nah, that ain't how that works. You hope that we get all of that stuff right, and we continue to build and build and build and get it to the point where now this job is attractive if we don't get the right man the first time around. But you want to hire the right coach. That's important. It's important. Dandrix, been a member for 21 months. Really appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, DQ's rep is fast and small. AP said you're going to feel us. I'm going to just insert a pause there on your behalf. You're right. He said that we're going to be a physical team. You're going to know you played Washington. They're going to play hard, all of that good stuff, all the shit that you're supposed to say. And that's not to say that Dan Quinn's teams don't do those things, right? And our team is built a little bit different because we got Jonathan Allen and Deron Payne inside. They didn't have that in Dallas. So he could run the same scheme, and we might be better at stopping the run because we got two dudes inside that are just better at stopping the run. That could be the case too. But again, Adam Peters will work with Dan Quinn if he is the head coach to pick the players that fit what Quinn wants to do, but he's also going to pick football players that he thinks are really good as well. So I think it'll be a mixture of both. But at the end of the day, you can do a lot of good things with what Dan Quinn brings to the table, defensively in particular. So, we'll see. Again, I'm just going to take a wait and see approach at this point. Kyle Dubb, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, Lou, I'm shook. We're going to keep EB on if Quinn is the hire. Tell me I'm tripping, please. You tripping, man. You tripping. I hope you tripping. I can't say for sure. I'm nervous. I told Miss Perry, I said, I swear to you, I'm nervous. I'm shook that EB could, because here's the thing. When I was expecting an offensive-minded head coach, I was like, there's no way Eric Bieniemy's here. Like, you hire an offensive-minded coach, the first thing he's going to do is get rid of the offensive staff and most of it, if not all of it, including the former offensive coordinator. He doesn't need that guy anymore. He'll be calling the plays. But now that you're hiring a defensive guy, I'm like, the more they wait, the longer we get into this process, the more of these candidates that dwindle, the more likely it is that you end up stuck with EB. But there's so many guys that we're not even thinking about that aren't already established offensive coordinators who are quarterbacks coaches, running back coaches, pass game coordinators, run game coordinators, guys that aren't even on our radar that could easily be promoted to an offensive coordinator that can take his job. And I'm just banking on one of those dudes, being hired from somewhere and brought to Washington. If it's not an already established coordinator, I just can't see a scenario in which Eric Bieniemy is back. Period. End of discussion. I think they're smart enough in that building to understand that he was awful here last year and he can't be brought back. So I'm just riding with that until they tell me I'm wrong. So Kyle, I think you tripping, but you're not though, because I'm just as shook and worried as you are. So that makes two of us, but I don't think it's happening, bro. I think we safe. Neil Wesner, stand up. You are the newest member of the MOBB. Mob, y'all know what this do. Show Neil some love. Welcome him with open arms. Neil, welcome to the squad. Glad to have you. Silver V, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you, my guy, Silver Villains. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, Here in KC, the feeling around the city is almost like we didn't realize this is possible. Yes, we have won a lot lately, and we've seen the Patriots do it. Still in awe at Reid and Mahomes' success, as you should be, and never take it for granted. That's the beauty of what you guys are doing, is that the Chiefs that fan base waited so long to win something, right? They waited so long. You probably didn't. The Chiefs hadn't won a Super Bowl since like Super Bowl 1, 2, or 5 or 6 or something like that. The Chiefs were really good early on with Hank Stram, and they didn't win another Super Bowl after that, right? And you waited all of this time, and then Mahomes shows up, and now it's just you winning every year. And what you never want to do is take that for granted. I thought one of the coolest things about the Patriots fans is they never took winning and Tom Brady and Belichick for granted. They rode that wave as long as they could ride it, and they had a damn good time doing it, and they never took that shit for granted. They treated it like it was the first time every time. And that's what you got to do. And I still feel like Chiefs fans are still enjoying it. They're still kind of taking it in, because it's just so hard. And while the Chiefs make it look easy, it's hard, bro. And I commend your fan base for that, because it's easy to get complacent, like, oh, we just expect a win. My uncle is a Chiefs fan, and you would have thought that y'all never won a Super Bowl before, because he gets so excited. And it's fun to watch. It's fun to watch. And again, you don't know how long it's going to last, right? I posed the scenario where Andy Reid could say, hey, I'm done. I want to spend time with my family after this. And shit could never be the same after that. Who knows, right? So just enjoy it. Enjoy the ride, because you don't know when it's going to end. King of the Bluegrass, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, you don't want Glenn. I don't want Glenn, so that means it's probably going to be Glenn. I didn't say I didn't want Glenn. I don't want Glenn, but I never said that I didn't want him. I just dismissed him. But generally, when I'm dismissive, that's when the shit happens. So either way, but yeah, either way, that usually doesn't bode well. When I dismiss some shit, it usually comes back, and it's that exact thing. So I don't think it's going to be Glenn, though. I think it's a 2-horse race. But you just never know, man. They've been doing a great job of keeping shit in-house. Nobody knows nothing. I like it like that. Nobody knows nothing. Video channel, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Video channel writes, Anthony Weaver was also the run game coordinator in Baltimore. Interesting coaching set of skills. I saw that on a message that somebody wrote. I never went and validated that or not. So I didn't want to run with that information, but I saw somebody tweet that out. Shout out to Miss Perry for keeping me abreast of everything. Miss Perry always be feeding me the information and making sure I stay up on the latest and greatest. And she sent me a tweet from somebody that had brought that up, but I never went in, because I told my wife, we were sitting there talking about this whole coaching situation, and I told my wife that Anthony Weaver was in the mix, and she was like, who? She had never heard that name. So that was news to her. And so I was explaining to her who Anthony Weaver was, associate head coach and defensive line coach for the Ravens. And she was like, oh, okay. She was kind of intrigued, right? But I'm like, so she was kind of like, tell me about him. And I'm like, I don't know nothing about him. And I said, I refuse to invest time into a guy that may not be here. I've done enough of that. I did that with Ben Johnson, right? I'm not doing that shit. I learned my lesson. So if they hire him, I'll do all the work I need to do. I'll do everything I need to do to be prepared to talk to you guys about him. But I'm not doing it. I did it enough already. I did it with Ben Johnson. I did it with Bobby Slowick. I did it with Mike McDonald. I did it already. And none of those guys are coming here. So at this point, if Anthony Weaver is coming here, when he gets here, when it is announced that he'll be the next head coach of that's when I'll dive in and I'll get to work. But I want no parts of that because I'm tapped out and doing work that ends up being frivolous in nature. So I don't know if he's actually the run game coordinator, if that is in fact true, and I don't have any reason to believe that you guys have erroneous information. That is an interesting set of skills. It reminds me a lot of Raheem Morris. The more you know, the better you are as a coach, because if you know defense as an offensive guy, then you know how to attack it, and vice versa. If you know offense and you're a defensive guy, you know how to attack it. So if he can set up the run game, that means he can stop the run as well, right? And so that is an interesting set of skills, if that is in fact true. Brad Woodward, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Brad writes, just get Belichick. He'll be a good stopgap and won't be here forever. He'll get good coaches to come with him. What do you think? Nah. We already talked about the dilemma that is Bill Belichick. He's going to want some power and some control and all of that good stuff. Stuff that we're not willing to relinquish, that we're not looking to give him. And I don't want to turn Washington into the New England Patriot. I don't want to say East because, the Patriots were on the East Coast, but I'm not looking to turn it into Patriots 2.0. I don't like how they conduct business. And I know people are like, I just want to win. Yeah, I do too, but I don't want to win with Bill Belichick. I'm good. I want something different. I want something new, fresh. I don't want something that is copy and paste and you hope it works out here. And another thing is Belichick has proven that he's incapable of winning without elite talent, or at least at the quarterback position. So I'm good. I'm good. I've been good on Belichick, and that hasn't changed. CGM 87, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. CGM 87 writes, Lou, thoughts on short-term deal for EB over Quinn? Play Howell, draft O-line. If he flops, we can run it back search in 2025 rather than 6 to 7, 4 years with Quinn. Nah, I don't want Eric Bieniemy in any capacity. Why is that so hard for y'all to understand? Like, y'all keep trying to shovel Eric Bieniemy my way. I don't want anything to do with this man at all. Period. I don't even want this man to be a consultant in Washington. He can't even take tickets at the gate. I don't even want him patting people down to get into the facility. I want nothing to do with Eric Bieniemy. Period. End of discussion. Nation's Capital, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Really appreciate you, Nation's Capital. CGM 87, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. CGM 87, who writes 6 to 7 wins with Quinn. I knew what you meant. Says Peter's hate is over the top, but frustrating if all eggs were in Ben's basket and then we got caught holding our genitalia. Yeah. I don't know if all the eggs were in the basket or not. It felt like they were, though. I'm not gonna lie to you. They tried to put a spin on it. I told you they were trying to do some serious. I watch Scandal. You can't pull one over on me. I know Damage Control 101 when I see it. They tried to spin the narrative like, oh no, he was a part of the search and we're very interested, but he's not the only guy. I don't know about that. You're kind of conducting yourself right now like you weren't prepared for this to happen the way that it did. But whatever, you know, um, whatever you got to tell yourself to sleep better at night, I'm all for it. At the end of the day, um, the Peters hate is ridiculous. I've seen enough of it before before this whole Ben Johnson thing happened. I saw enough of it. That's what prompted me to do the video. When I said, don't bring that shit to me. I don't want to see it. Like, you can do it. Don't at me. Don't bring that shit to me though. They still doing it anyway. They want a reaction out of me. They're not gonna get it. I've been in this game for too long. I'm trying to be nice because it was a couple of times today where I wanted to be ignorant, just with pictures, no words, just with gifts that were dismissive, that would piss people off, but they were already pissed off enough. I didn't need to fan those flames anymore. But I was real close. I was real close today to being an N-word. I was so close and I wanted to do it so bad, but I had to use better judgment. I'm gonna tell you what though. There's nothing that could come of this situation that will change my perspective of Adam Peters. Nothing. And that's the thing that's so frustrating with the fan base is that I don't know what they were expecting. Like the thing that's maddening is you don't know we didn't know what Ben Johnson was going to be. Like, why y'all acting like Ben Johnson is a 3-time Super Bowl winning head coach that comes with this pristine track record that if we hired him, we knew we were going to win? Like, we didn't know what we were getting. He could have come here and been absolutely hot garbage. Hot garbage. We don't like fans are so frustrating sometimes because they create these narratives in their head that can't be any further from the truth. And then when things don't go the way that they create the way that the narrative that they created in their head, they lose it. And that's what's happening right now. They created a narrative in their head. It's not going in the way that they thought it was going to go. And now they're getting pissed off. And now they're attacking Adam Peters. The man ain't even been on the job for a month yet. And people coming for this man's throat. Like, y'all, this is why I talked about patience and perseverance. You think I'm making this shit up? You think I'm pulling this stuff out of thin air for no reason? You think I'm preaching to y'all and asking y'all to do this stuff beforehand for no reason? I see this shit every day. I saw this coming. I didn't see Ben Johnson standing us up at the altar like he did. But I saw that if one thing went wrong, just one, this fan base is going to lose it because they're on edge. They're all over the place, man. That's why I said, until we win, this is what it's going to be. And I gotta wire my brain to understand until we win, there won't be any unity within the fan base. Because the only language that everybody speaks is winning. That's the only language that's universal. Because you're going to have people talking jersey talk. You're going to have people talking name talk. You're going to have people talking coach talk. You're going to have people talking quarterback talk. People all over the map. People all over the place. Nobody's talking about the same shit. You got people talking about the Senior Bowl. I don't give a shit about the Senior Bowl right now. People all over the place. Every time John Perez, my guy JP, shows up, JP will be so oblivious to what's going on. JP don't care about nothing else. All he want to talk about is the quarterback. That's his thing, right? Then you get somebody else, they don't want to talk about nothing else but the name. They don't talk about nothing on the field, none of that shit. That nothing's going to happen until we change the name. Everybody's speaking different languages. But you know what the one universal language is that gets everybody talking the same shit? Winning. And the problem is we ain't going to be talking that same universal language for probably 2 to 3 years. So this is the shit we left with. And if your stomach is weak, because this shit ain't for everybody, okay? Clearly, you can see right now with the way the fan bases react, this shit is not for everybody. People are like, how can you just sit there and talk about we're good with all of this going on? We're going to be in this same spot in 3 years looking for a coach. You could be same spot next year looking for a coach. And I'm just looking at this dude like, I literally sent him the grandma from Blackish when she's like, just sitting there like, bro, what are you getting all riled up about? It's January 31st. What are you doing? We just went 3-14, bro. Oh, 4-13, bro. What are you getting riled up on January 31st for? We just pulled the best GM candidate in the league. What are you upset about right now? Seriously? We're doing this on January 31st? I'm not. You can. I'm not. So, at the end of the day, is it frustrating that this search seems a little janky? Yeah, it's a little janky because they got. It's okay to get got. You got. You thought you had a guy lined up and he jerked you. It happens. You don't want it to happen, but it happened. Let's see how they pivot. I've said this a million times. Let's see how they pivot. King of the Bluegrass, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. King of the Bluegrass writes, for me, Joe Gibbs is 2. He won 3 Super Bowls with 3 different quarterbacks, 17-7 career playoff record, all this in 15 seasons. Wow. I'm biased. So, he's on the Mount Rushmore head coaches. When you start talking about NFL head coaches, Joe Jackson Gibbs is on the Mount Rushmore because of what you just said. No other coach can lay claim to 3 Super Bowls with 3 different quarterbacks but Joe Gibbs. Nobody else is doing that. Usually when you win multiple Super Bowls, you got a guy. Like I'm just talking 2 Super Bowls. Anything more than 1, you got a guy. Reid, Mahomes, Jimmy Johnson, Aikman, Chuck Noll, Bradshaw, Bill Walsh, Montana, right? I think George Seifert won 2, right? 1 with Montana and then 1 with Young, if I'm not mistaken. But generally, you got a guy. Generally speaking, that is. Not always is that the case, but generally, you got a guy. And Joe didn't. That's what made his shit so special. And I'll take it a step further. We're seeing, the Patriots. We saw the Patriots dynasty. We're seeing the Chiefs in the midst of a dynasty. Gibbs did his in 9 years. He did his damage in 9 years. 3 Super Bowls in 9 years. Went to 4. Won 3 in 9 years. Again, that's some dynasty shit too. Right? And it was a little different because when he did it, there was some damn good teams. The Giants and the 49ers and the Bears. Like the NFC was treacherous. in those days. Cowboys were still good at the very beginning of that, right? We had to go through them to win the Super Bowl in 82, right? So the NFC was treacherous in the 80s and the early 90s. And he still won 3 Super Bowls, went to 4. So look, we're biased, but anyway, I digress. Zoe Life, No Life. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, need Quinn to put his cap on backwards and call the defense. Tired of coaches napping during games. I want energy. Also, why was Atlanta's D mid with Quinn? So it really wasn't. You had to watch it. Like, when somebody tell a joke and that shit ain't funny to you, but they be weak and they be like, man, you had to be there though, right? Remember that? That's kind of how you had to watch Quinn's defenses in Atlanta. They weren't mid for real. Their biggest flaw was they couldn't get to the quarterback. Like they had like 97-year-old John Abraham trying to get to the quarterback. That was their biggest downfall and deficiency, is they could not get to the quarterback consistently. Outside of that, they flew around, man. They flew around. That was Deion Jones at his best. Keanu Neal was hitting people. Like, they had Witherspoon at linebacker. Like, they were fast. They were physical. I think Robert Alford was a part of that team. Like, he had some really solid defenses. He really did. They were up on the Patriots 28-3 for a reason. Now, they ultimately gave it up, but the defense wasn't ass. But you had to be there, though. But I think to answer your question, though, if we're being honest, their GM, Thomas Dimitroff, wasn't a really good GM. And I don't think he did Dan Quinn enough favors. And it's crazy because while he wasn't the best GM, he wasn't the worst, and he hasn't worked in the NFL since he got fired from Atlanta, which is odd because when you're a GM and you get fired, if you know some dudes around the league, bro, you get a job easy. They'll make up a position for you. Anyway, Poopin' for Noopin'. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Poopin' for Noopin' writes, I'm ready for Dan's plan. Dan's plan. It won't come from me. I can assure you of that. If you get Dan's plan, it will not come from me. That is for sure. I've learned my lesson. Starting campaigns behind other people. If I start a campaign, it's going to be off my back and my back alone. I'm not doing no more player or coach campaigns. I'm out of that game after Sam Howell, situation went sideways. I had so much invested into that. So much. And I was ready. I was ready to press the button. Oh, I was so ready to press that button. And I was so close to doing it. After that Seattle game, oh, man, I'm so glad I didn't do it because I was ready to press that button. Ooh, it was going to be so glorious. It would have blown up in my face. It would have been so epic. But then the backlash, oh, my God, I would have never heard the end of it from Eagles and Cowboys and Giants fans had I done it. I'm glad I waited. Because I didn't see that shit coming. After week 10, I was convinced. And that's why I was ready to press the button. Red Wolf 17. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Red Wolf writes, if Weaver is offered the job, Do you think he'll decline and just go back to Baltimore? Nah, bro. Understand what and I've explained this to y'all. Anthony Weaver is a defensive line coach. Forget about associate head coach. Forget about that title. The man is a defensive lines coach, a defensive line coach. Okay. You really think he's turning down an opportunity to be a head? He's not a defensive coordinator. Now, maybe with McDonald moving on, maybe that job is offered to him in Baltimore. Maybe he's the next guy in line for that job. And if he doesn't get a head coaching job, they will promote from within. He'll become the new defensive coordinator, and we'll get to find out how good of a, play caller he can be, what he brings to the table. But understand, this man is not a coordinator. He's a D-line coach. Now, he's been a coordinator. We went through this already. I've told you this already. He was a defensive coordinator in name in Houston, but it was really under Romeo Crennel's watch. Romeo was really calling the defense. He wasn't really the defensive coordinator. So, again, you're giving a guy an opportunity to be the head coach of a team who hasn't even really been the real defensive coordinator. You think he's going to pass that opportunity up? And Anthony Weaver strikes me as an alpha, not a guy that I don't know if I'm ready for this opportunity. If he gets an opportunity, he's chomping at the bit to get that thing. Trust me, he's taking the job. King of the Bluegrass, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. King of the Bluegrass writes, Lou, don't say rebuild in Washington. The DMV Crisis Center is going to be overrun with calls of panic, people jumping off buildings left and right. I got to call a spade a spade. It is what it is. This is a rebuild, bro. Ain't no two ways about it. You could try to act. First of all, when you go 4-13 and you fire everybody and you start from scratch, what is that called? It'd be one thing if we were Seattle and we built up all this equity and we made it to the playoffs all these years and been to the Super Bowl multiple times, won one, and we don't experience losing seasons. Remember when we called them going through a rebuilding phase when, the Legion of Boom finally was broken up. They moved on from Russell Wilson. Everything was brand new in Seattle. I think even Bobby Wagner was gone. And we was like, oh, they rebuilding in Seattle. That's going to be crazy. They're going to suck. They got Drew Lock and Geno Smith. Oh, yeah, they definitely rebuilding in Seattle. And then them bastards went and won 9 games, made the playoffs. They don't rebuild in Seattle. They just reload. That's different. We are rebuilding here in Washington. You don't like it? Just wear a parachute. If you want to jump off a building, wear a parachute. But that's the fact of the matter, which is why this job isn't attractive to a Mike McDonald, because it is a rebuild. You are going to lose football games here. Joe Rockhead, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Joe writes, would you resurrect Byron Leftwich for OC? Nah, I didn't even love him in Tampa. So, nah, I'm good on that. And there's a reason why that man hasn't seen work since. Like, if you're really good at what you do, you'll get another opportunity somewhere. Is he even working in the league right now? Period. On anybody's staff? There's no lifeline. There's no call a friend. I'm curious now, because once it didn't work in Tampa, Remember, this man was this close to getting a head coaching job in Jacksonville, and it didn't happen. And the next year, he was awful. It didn't work. And I ain't heard from that man since. I do not think this man is working right now. Yeah, he is not working right now. So you would truly be resurrecting this man's career if you brought him in. And I'm not interested in doing that at all. I think a lot of his success came from the fact that he was coaching the GOAT, not because he was a dynamic play caller personally. So now I'm good on that. Barrett Downing, my guy, BD. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, BD, writes, I'm just rolling with the punches, Lou. I just want us to win, even if Bugs Bunny is coaching. Respect, bro. That's the problem with this fan base is they just want to win. And that it reminds me of my past life when I was a merchandiser and I was slanging that grass seed and fertilizer and lime. And I'd be on the grass seed aisle and somebody would walk up to me and say, hey, I ain't really trying to spend a whole bunch of money or time or none of that. I'm not trying to have no high water bill. I just want to grow some grass. Which one of these can I throw down? None of them, bruh. None of these are magic grass seeds, okay? You want to grow grass? You want a healthy lawn? It's shit you got to do. You got to check the pH levels in your lawn, in your soil. If you don't have good soil, you can't grow grass. You can grow moss. You want a yard full of weeds? That's easy to get. Everybody's got that. You want an actual lawn full of green, healthy grass? It's steps to this, man. It's a process. Too many fans just want to win. You just want to throw down some grass seed, walk away. Don't even want to water them bitches. Just leave them there. Hopefully it rain outside. BD, it's a process, bro. I hate to be the bearer of bad news and the person to break it to you, but it's process. And I know we've been losing a long time and you just want to win. We all want to win. But it ain't no magic wand that you wave and turn this shit around. You got to get it out the mud. And again, it's a lot of fans that have gone through so much. And I'm like, bro, if you've been through all of that and you complaining about this, I get it. Sometimes you just get fed up. My tolerance is a lot greater than many of you, I guess. But if you've been through this, if you survived Snyder and now you made it to the other side, you complaining about this? Why? This is the healthiest we've been in eons, and you complaining? I don't know, man. And I'm not talking about you, BD. But anyway, I digress. Joe Davila, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Joe writes, how come there's no talk about Vrabel? Good coach. I'm actually surprised that they never even attempted to interview him. I really think that they steered clear of him intentionally. I think they heard some things and they just weren't interested in his brand. So they didn't even. I'm shocked at just how little interest there was in Mike Vrabel, period, during the entire cycle. And I think that speaks to the way the league is moving, right? There were 8 openings. How many of them were offensive dudes? Let's try to go through this. So the Raiders wasn't an offensive dude. The Patriots wasn't an offensive dude. The Seahawks wasn't an offensive dude. I think Raheem Morris is more of a defensive dude than he is an offensive dude, but I'm not actually sure. He's kind of ambiguous. We'll just say he's neither. Titans hired an offensive guy. Panthers hired an offensive guy. So only two of the hires right now have been offensive guys. So that's interesting in itself when you sit there and think about it. But when you think about Mike Vrabel and his situation in Tennessee, how it ended, how it went, I think there's this narrative about Vrabel and potentially what you're getting with him and him wanting control. And I don't think teams were willing to relinquish that. Similar to Belichick. Belichick didn't get a bunch. Now, Belichick's older. There's a lot more that I think comes with Belichick, but Vrabel comes from that Belichick tree, and I think they saw those two as being similar candidates in terms of what they would want in a job. So, Jay Black, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, "We about to see NHL hats in third world countries." Hey, I wish I would go to like some third world country and some kids running around with an NHL hat on. I'd be so ecstatic, right? I'm elated to see. I need to donate them joints, to be honest with you, but you couldn't tell me nothing when I came up with it. When it started to hit, and I thought, man, I'm telling you, I was ready to press that button. I'm so glad that I just waited, because after week 10, I was like, there's no way that this thing can end badly. Boy, was I wrong. It went, because remember, I was saying, look, Sam can't hurt himself at this point. We know what he is. He's just, as long as he's not like horrid. He was horrid, though. he was terrible. It was bad. It was bad. Rohan M, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Rohan writes, "Do we hire Anthony Weaver or Dan Quinn?" I don't know. I've already made this abundantly clear, though, Rohan. My order of what I think they're going to do is Quinn 1, Weaver 2, and I don't even know if Glenn is being considered, but he'd be 3 at this point. But I think Quinn is still the lead dog in the clubhouse. But I think Weaver is the only way you can save face with the fan base at this point. they don't want anything to do with Dan Quinn. It's a shame. Because Quinn's not a bad coach, but we got PTSD from Rivera, man. That's what it boils down. If we never had Rivera, they wouldn't be shitting on Quinn like this. But it's too eerily similar to what Rivera was. And that scares the shit out of people. And I don't blame them. I'm not terrified of Dan Quinn, but I get it. I get it. Totally get it. And it is what it is. You can't be mad at people because they see similarities, striking similarities between the two coaches. Even if they're not the same guy and their situations aren't the same, it does not matter. People are going to see what they want to see. And 2 winning seasons in 6 years, going to a Super Bowl and losing, not getting it done as a head coach, 7-9, 7-9, like that shit scares people. All the shit that people are saying about Quinn, great leader. He's a guy that is player coach friendly. That's all the shit we heard about Rivera. Like, fans aren't going for that shit. They ain't trying to hear that. Not that it matters, because they're going to do whatever the hell they're going to do regardless. This ain't Dan Snyder, being run off of the spot with Jim Fossil because fans revolted and threatened to trade in their season tickets, and he panicked and ended up hiring Jim Zorn. This ain't that. Not that they care, but that's why they're so angry. That's part of the reason why fans are so angry right now. It's because they see Rivera in Dan Quinn, and there's no way to sell the fan base on that. K. Rule Mather, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. K. Rule writes, what's your ideal head coach scenario now? I don't know about Quinn. Honestly, I'm intrigued by Weaver. But you know why I'm intrigued by Weaver? Because he's different. He's new. That doesn't mean he's good. That doesn't mean he's right for us. Again, Quinn could be exactly what we need, but we're running from it because it looks too much like Rivera. I don't know what Weaver is. I don't know. People are saying that he's the equivalent of Dan Campbell. He's one of these emotionally charged, rah-rah guys that can captivate a room. He's an alpha. People follow him. He's a very, very charismatic leader. And these are all great traits and qualities to have. But the thing that Dan Campbell also had that Weaver, I don't know if he has or not. He may lack this. Campbell was well-traveled, had experience, was an interim head coach before, which Weaver has not been. Weaver's only been in 2 organizations. I think Campbell had been in multiple organizations. Obviously, he was with the Dolphins. I don't know if he had been anywhere other than the Dolphins and the Saints before getting to the Lions, but he had crossed paths with so many different coaches. And one of the things, and I talked about this superpower that Campbell has, in addition to being a charismatic leader and a guy that can galvanize not just the 53 players, but also the coaching staff, is he assembled a hell of a staff. Can Weaver do that? I don't know if he's crossed paths with enough good coaches to be able to do so. That's important. That's very important, especially for a first-time head coach. You want to be able to delegate. You don't want to have to worry about doing everything. You don't want to be a helicopter coach when it's your first time. The more people that you trust to do their jobs gives you more freedom to be the head coach and do the things that you need to do to be successful. There's a lot of unknowns that come with an Anthony Weaver that don't come with a Dan Quinn. But you can't be afraid to step out into the unknown. What did EB say again? What was that quote? Comfort is the enemy of progress. He did leave us with one gem, right? Comfort is the enemy of progress. And that's why I think I would lean towards Anthony Weaver. Quinn is the comfortable candidate. You know what you're getting. Or at least there's a body of work there that would lead you to believe that, he's capable. Similar to Rivera. You don't know what you're getting in Weaver. But why not find out? Anyway. Eric Sunderland, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, are you worried about the QB we draft this year getting destroyed like Hal was this year without a good head coach or OC? No. I'm not worried about that right now. I may be more concerned about that after I see what is done in the draft and free agency. that may change how I feel. Right now, I'm not concerned about that because we haven't addressed anything yet. If like we could see problems arising at certain positions because of the lack of attention to detail at those positions via the draft and free agency last season in particular. So after seeing what they do, I'll be able to assess how I will feel. But obviously, we just watched bad coaching destroy a young quarterback. We just watched that. So that is definitely plausible. So again, don't know. We got to see how it plays out because Dan Quinn could get the job, hire somebody good as an OC, and that's not an issue. Weaver could get the job, hire somebody good as OC, and it's not an issue. Both of those dudes, respectively, could get hired and hire bad OCs, and it could be a similar situation. Or they could keep EB on board, which is even worse. But I don't know. I'm not worried right now. That's how I answer the question is I'm not worried right now. Come back to me in 4 months from now, and I'll be able to probably answer that question. Because we would have already had free agency, the draft, and I can kind of see now what the vision is, what they've done to the offensive line, who the offensive coordinator is, what is his background, what is he going to try to do, and then we can kind of go from there. Now I can start to formulate how I feel. Can't do that right now because there's so many unknowns, so many variables that could change how I feel. Joe Rockhead, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, Quinn without GM powers could be vastly different. I don't think he had GM powers in Atlanta. They had a GM. So, and that might be your point, is that maybe he had, a little bit more say so in the players that were brought in, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know. I don't really get what you're asking. I don't really get what you're saying. Because he didn't have total control of that Falcons roster when he was in Atlanta. There was a GM there. So you'd have to explain to me what you were trying to say. It's not like it was a coach-centric approach in Atlanta and he was burdened and tasked with filling out the roster like Rivera was here, and it watered down his ability to be a good head coach. I don't think that's what the situation was in Atlanta. Could be wrong, but I don't think that's what it was. King of the Bluegrass, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. King of the Bluegrass writes, this is why I said the end of the season, the number 2 pick in the GM were the most crucial decisions of the offseason for the future of this team. Yeah, I think that's I think if you were ranking the 3 decisions that were going to have to be made, GM was 1, the number 2 overall pick and getting the right quarterback is 2, and the coach is 3. That doesn't make head coach and the decision you make there, that doesn't minimize its impact and importance. It just means you could get the head coach wrong, but get the quarterback right and be like the Chargers were with Justin Herbert. Like that, Herbert can play. They didn't get the right coach, right? Brandon Staley wasn't the right coach, but they got the quarterback though. And you got the quarterback. And you can win. They went to the playoffs despite not having the right coach. Because that quarterback is transformative. So that's why it's so important. You get the quarterback and you can overcome some things, including poor offensive coordinator coaching, right? They've had multiple offensive coordinators in LA for Justin Herbert. Joe Lombardi, Kellen Moore. None of it has been clean. He still performed at a high level, though. So you can overcome poor coaching if you got an elite quarterback. So I would rank them 1, GM, check. 2, number 2 overall pick, quarterback. And then 3 would be the head coach. And you're not wrong. And that's how you probably have it. I mean, I don't know. The quarterback and number 2 overall pick could be your number 1, whatever the case. You got it in some way, shape, or form similar to the way I have it. And I think that's pretty much how it's going to be. Brian N., thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Brian N. writes, thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy Brian writes, hey, Lou, what's up, Brian? I think we won't pick a coach until after the Super Bowl, thinking Peters will look at San Francisco assistant at this point. I disagree with that. And I've said it a bunch of times, and a lot of people are running with that narrative. I'm not a part of that groupthink methodology of, oh, that's why he's waiting. Nah, this shit is over, and they're going to make a decision either tomorrow or Friday. So I'm not convinced. And you could be right. And everybody that's saying that he's waiting to talk to, Chiefs or San Francisco assistant, y'all could be right. Because they had a monkey wrench thrown in their plans, and maybe plan B was to widen, as I said, cast a wider net. So that would mean, though, if they cast a wider net, it would mean that none of the guys that they've interviewed has blown them away. And that's not what we've heard. We didn't hear that none of the candidates were impressive. We've heard that Weaver and Quinn both were equally impressive, or both impressive. Maybe not equally, but both were impressive. That if that's the case, then what do we? There's nothing else to talk about. We don't need to keep looking. You keep looking if nobody has wowed you. That's not the case, which is why I think they're done with this search, and they're going to make a decision here shortly, Thursday or Friday. Joe Rockhead, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Joe Rockhead writes, still outside with how till his jersey change. I ain't mad at it. I am not mad at it because I already told you he can play. I think he can play in this league. So even if it's not here, I think he's going to have some sort of success in this league. He's just got to find the right opportunity and find a coaching staff that believes in him and gives him an opportunity. He gets that, I think he can be successful. I've seen the talent. Boy, will that piss a lot of people off if he goes somewhere else and succeeds. A lot of people wouldn't be able to handle that, boy. I tell you that much. Anyway, I digress. All right, let's transition. Oh, got one more. King of the Bluegrass. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, I'm still outside too. Yeah. Bless y'all hearts, man. It is blistery out there, man. It's cold as shit out there. I had to come on in. I finally had to come inside. I didn't want to do it, but he made me do it. He made me do it. He made me do it. Anyway, let's get to our final segment of the show and garbage time. So Mike McDonald goes to the Seattle Seahawks. And I can tell you this. I was not surprised. I told you guys yesterday that if I were Mike McDonald, I would go to Seattle too. It's a better situation. They're set up to win right now. They got young defensive talent. And as I said, when you're a defensive coach, you're looking for a cake that's already baked. Like DeMeco Ryans knew what he was walking into when he took the Texans job. He knew that was supposed to be a rebuild. They've had the worst record in the NFL collectively over the last 3 years. They've had the number 2 pick twice and like the number 1 pick, or the number 2 pick twice and the number 3 pick or something. Like, they've been one of the worst teams in football for the last 3 years. Not one of the worst team in football, aggregate record wise, the last 3 years. So he knew who he was walking into, and he was lucky enough to pick the right coordinator to come with him, hit a home run on CJ Stroud, kill it with Tank Dell, already have some pieces there that were workable. And like I said, they had been building that defense that he ultimately took over. And then he added a few pieces he was comfortable with, and voila, they were able to compete. Doesn't hurt that they play in an ass division too. That helps as well. But that's not where Mike Macdonald is going. He's not going to an ass division. Clearly, quite the contrary. However, he did sweep that division in Baltimore last year. Beat every single team in that division. 4-0. That said, the young talent that exists defensively for Seattle, coupled with the immense talent on the offensive side, it's a no-brainer. And I've always felt like a defensive-minded coach could go into Seattle and win immediately. My pick for them was Vrabel, right? I did the podcast episode where I put coaches where their best fit was, because Vrabel likes veteran teams that are ready to win. And I thought that Seattle was a veteran team that was ready to win. And that's part of the allure for a guy like Mike Macdonald. Because what you got to understand is, while there's a good mixture of young and veteran players, there's a lot of young players on Seattle's team, but it's enough veterans there that you can win right now, specifically at key positions, quarterback being one of them. And again, when you leave a situation, you want to go somewhere where you think you can win immediately. And Washington's not that destination. I've already told you why I thought this was one of the better jobs. The Washington job was one of the better jobs, both GM and head coaching wise. But I always said, from a GM perspective, it's clearly number one. It's not close because of all the resources that GM would have available to him. And you'd have a blank canvas, essentially, to come in and, revamp this thing and build it the way you want. Head coach is a little bit different, because you got to be willing to take on the challenge of turning around a program that's at the bottom, void of talent right now. And you've got to be willing to take some of those lumps and grow with this team and get them to where they ultimately, want to be. But if you had an offensive guy that understood the assignment, you could get it done. And once you went defensive side of the ball, it changes. And that's why Mike Macdonald going to Seattle isn't a surprise. And it's a good fit for him. I like the pieces he has to work with. I think he can do a lot of good things. We watched Arthur Marlette in Baltimore be a blitzing nickel that caused and created all types of havoc. What do you think he's going to do with Devon Witherspoon, who was already a problem in the slot as a blitzer last year? What do you think he's going to do with that kid? Are you kidding me? They've got some corners out there that, one of their corners in particular, I think he kind of lost his confidence last year. He got benched a couple of times. And but we know Reek Woolen is talented. I know he can do some things with Reek Woolen. Like, it's a lot of stuff, man. Boye Mafe, Jordan Brooks. Like it's some good stuff that they got to work with there. He's got a chance to really turn that defense into something. With that offense that they could potentially put on the field, there's no reason they can't win 9, 10, 11 games next year. And that's what he envisioned, and that's why he took the job. And I think it's a great hire, and I think they're going to absolutely love what they're getting in Mike Macdonald. He'll fit into that division because in a division with Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan as the two, coaches that are really successful in that division right now, if you can't outscore them, you better be able to slow them down. And that's why Arizona went and got Jonathan Gannon to try to slow them down. And now Seattle is following suit. I think it's a tremendous hire. We'll see. You always got to remember the first rule of thumb when you hire a coach, when you go out and draft players, when you go out in free agency and sign, you're trying to win your division. How do we combat what is currently in our division? That hire screams, if we want to be the best, we got to beat the best. And our best way to beat them is to neutralize their offenses. We don't feel good about trying to have to outscore Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers or Sean McVay in the Rams. What we do feel good about is neutralizing those offenses and giving our offense a chance to outscore theirs after our defense sinks its teeth into them. That's when Seattle was its most successful, when their defense was top-notch, and that's what they're trying to recreate. And we'll see if they can do it with Mike Macdonald. Hell of a hire, and I think they got themselves one of the best coaches available in the market this coaching cycle. Good for the Seattle Seahawks. And with that said, that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on this installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I got one super chat here from C Trill. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, me too, as in outside for Sam. There's still some Sam supporters out there, but it's few and far between, and I can't say that I'm standing with y'all right now. Like, as much as EB let me down, and he really truly did let me down and let Sam down, Sam let me down too. It's no different than Carson Wentz in the sense that Scott Turner let Carson Wentz down, the offensive line let Carson Wentz down, but eventually you got to stand up and be accountable and say, you know what? I'm going to still find a way to get shit done. At some point, you got to stand up and say, all right, I'm going to figure this shit out. And Wentz couldn't do it, and Sam Howell couldn't do it. And it sucks because I put more of the blame on Wentz because he's a veteran. You should know better. Howell was essentially a rookie, and he was thrusted into the situation, and they didn't give him an opportunity to be successful. But it's a damn shame how it happened, but it happened. And I told Sam, I said, bro, if you want to save your job, just win a couple games. And he couldn't do it. He couldn't do it. If we didn't have the number 2 pick, we probably wouldn't be selecting a quarterback. He couldn't do it. And not only could he not do it, he played horrible. He made it worse. And Jacoby coming in and playing well didn't make it any better. But anyway. Dandrix, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Dandrix writes, thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, Ben Johnson was my last hope for NHO. UNC ties and fixed golf. Damn. There was just in the back of my mind, I don't think that was something that was the draw for me necessarily, but it was a part of the Ben Johnson package. It was a a sliver of hope of, hey, maybe, just maybe he comes in here and says, oh, no, I can fix him. I'm good. I don't need a quarterback. There was a little bit of that in the back of my mind, but I wasn't banking on that. And that wasn't one of the main reasons I wanted him here. But that did exist in my mind. But anyway, I digress. So that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on the 393rd installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I thank you guys for kicking it with the kid on some late night Louie action. You guys were awesome tonight. This was a fun pod. I really appreciate y'all. And I look forward to chopping it up with you guys again on Friday. And I was going to say, let's have a little fun with that pod, but I can't make you any promises. We'll see. But normally it's the third, Friday of the month where we flashback Friday, but we haven't done that in such a long time. Maybe we could do that. I don't know. We'll see. I don't want to make you any promises, but maybe we'll be able to get into a little something on Friday. We'll see. If there's a podcast on Friday. I say that now, and then I get to Friday and all kinds of foolishness happens and there's no pod, but we'll see. Anyway, you guys enjoy the rest of your evening. I look forward to chopping it up with you guys the next time we meet. And y'all know what it is. Y'all take care. God bless. And good night.
LouieTeeNetwork.